The Galactic Academy was the most prestigious military school in the universe. It was a place where the strongest, fastest, and smartest species came to train. Most students here were giants with scales, four-armed warriors, or creatures with telepathic powers. And then there was Maya. Maya was 19 human, and, compared to everyone else, looked like she was made of glass. She didn't have claws. She didn't have a protective shell. She just had a ponytail and a standard, issue gray jumpsuit. To the rest of the galaxy, humans were a mystery. They were new, they were small, and they were widely considered Level 1 threats, basically harmless. The instructor for the day was Commander Krell. Krell was of Archon, a species known for having 6 muscular arms and a temper that could melt steel. He hated the fact that a human had been admitted to his elite reflex class. To him, Maya was a waste of space. "All right, listen up, you biological accidents," Krell roared, his voice bouncing off the high-tech walls of the training hall. "Today is the reflex test. In the real world, the universe doesn't wait for you to get ready. It hits you fast. It hits you hard." The other students, mostly bulky aliens from high-gravity planets, nodded nervously. They were used to the Level 1 training drones, little floating spheres that shot tiny, stinging lasers. It hurt, but it wouldn't kill you. But Krell wasn't looking at the drones today. His 6 eyes were locked on Maya, who was standing calmly in the center of the room. She was just stretching her hamstrings, looking like she was getting ready for a morning jog. Her calmness pushed Krell over the edge. "Human?" Krell stepped forward, his heavy boots thumping on the metal floor. "You think this is a joke? You think your luck will get you through a real fight?" Maya stopped stretching and looked up. "No, sir. I just think I'm ready." Krell let out a dry, clicking laugh. "Ready? You don't even have your kinetic armor on. You're standing there in a cloth suit. One mistake and you're a hole in the wall." "I don't plan on making a mistake," Maya said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it was steady. Too steady. The room went cold. The other students started whispering. "Is she crazy?" A blue-skinned cadet whispered. "Krell is going to break her." Krell reached into his heavy belt. But he didn't grab a training remote. Instead, he pulled out a Mark 7 plasma pistol. This was a legendary weapon. It was heavy, black, and had a glowing blue core. It wasn't designed for classrooms. It was designed to punch holes through tank armor. A collective gasp went through the room. "Sir," a student shouted, stepping forward. "That's a Lev weapon?" "The safety protocols. The safety protocols are for children?" Krell barked, pointing all 6 of his eyes at the student. "This human claims her species has something called adrenaline. She says their brains speed up when they are in danger. Well, I want to see it." Maya didn't flinch. She didn't call for help. She just shifted her weight slightly, her sneakers squeaking on the floor. Krell raised the heavy pistol. The hum of the weapon began to grow. It was a low, vibrating sound that made the floor shake. On the wall, the thermal scanners, machines meant to monitor the room's temperature, started to turn from green to a pulsing, angry red. The pistol was drawing so much energy it was heating up the air around it. "This shot moves at Mach 2, Maya," Krell sneered, his finger tightening on the trigger. "At this distance, you have exactly 0.04 seconds to react. If you're as slow as you look, this is the last lesson you'll ever take." Maya's pupils dilated. Her heart rate, which the Academy's sensors were tracking on a large screen, didn't spike. It slowed down. To an alien, looked like she was giving up. To a human, it was the zone. The red light on the scanner flashed. "Kreta command. Ready or not human," Krell growled. He pulled the trigger. A blinding flash of blue, white light exploded from the barrel. It was a streak of pure destruction, hissing through the air with the sound of 1,000 hornets. The light was so bright that half the students turned away, shielding their eyes. They expected a scream. They expected the smell of burnt fabric. They expected to see their classmate gone. The streak of plasma reached the center of the room in the blink of an eye. And then, total silence. No explosion. No scream. No body hitting the floor. The smoke from the discharge curled slowly toward the ceiling. Krell stood frozen, his pistol still smoking. He blinked all 6 of his eyes, trying to clear his vision. "Maya," someone whispered. As the smoke cleared, the silhouette of the human girl appeared. She hadn't moved from her spot. She wasn't dead. But something was very, very wrong. The silence in the room wasn't just quiet. It was terrifying. Every alien in that room felt a sudden, primal instinct to run. Because in the middle of the hall, Maya was standing with her hand closed, and something was glowing white, hot between her fingers. The silence in the training hall wasn't just quiet, it was heavy. It felt like the air itself had turned into lead. Every alien cadet in the room, creatures from across a dozen star systems, forgot how to breathe. They were all staring at the same spot, the center of the room, where a small, harmless, human girl was standing. The blue smoke from the Mark 7 plasma pistol curled around Maya's boots like a ghost. For a few seconds, nobody moved. They were waiting for her to fall. They were waiting for the hole in her chest to appear. After all, a plasma slug doesn't just hit you. It melts through bone and steel alike. It moves faster than the eye can track. But Maya didn't fall. She stood there, her right arm extended as if she had just reached out to grab a fly out of the air. Her fist was clamped shut so tightly that her knuckles were white. Between her fingers, a faint, rhythmic pulsing of blue light flickered, casting eerie shadows against her face. Commander Krell, the six-armed instructor, was the first to find his voice, though it sounded broken. "No," he whispered, his mandibles clicking in pure terror. "The sensors, the math. The velocity of a Mark 7 is Mach 2. It is physically impossible for a biological entity to track that movement, let alone intercept it." Maya didn't look at Krell. She looked at her hand. Slowly, agonizingly slowly, she began to uncurl her fingers. As her palm opened, the cadets in the front row scrambled backward, tripping over their own tails and tentacles. Resting in the center of her hand was the core of the plasma shot. It wasn't a liquid anymore. It was a flattened, glowing disk of superheated energy, pulsing like a dying star. The heat coming off her hand was so intense that the air around her began to shimmer. Her skin was a deep, angry red, the color of a sunset, but there was no blood. There was no charred flesh. Her hand wasn't melting, it was absorbing the heat. "You missed," Maya said. Her voice was flat. It didn't have the high-pitched tone of fear or the shaking of a survivor. It sounded like a judge passing a sentence. Suddenly, a loud sirake echoed through the hall. Everyone jumped. It wasn't a gunshot. It was the thermal scanners on the walls. The high-tech sensors, designed to monitor the most dangerous species in the galaxy, had reached their limit. The screens turned bright red, then black, as the internal circuits melted. They couldn't calculate the energy May's body was currently holding. "The human, she's a heat sink," whispered a cadet from the Xylo species, their bioluminescent skin flickering in panic. "She didn't just catch it. She took the kinetic energy and converted it. That shouldn't be possible. Humans are supposed to be soft." Maya took a single step toward Krell. The sound of her sneaker hitting the metal floor sounded like a drum in the silent room. Krell's survival instincts finally kicked in. He was a war veteran, a decorated officer of the galactic hegemony, but in that moment he felt like a mouse looking at a hawk. He fumbled with his pistol, his multiple hands shaking so badly he could barely hold the grip. "Stay back," Krell screamed, his voice cracking. "I'll fire again. I'll set it to maximum. You're a freak of nature, human." "You're a glitch in the system." Maya didn't stop. She didn't speed up either. She just kept walking, that glowing, humming piece of death still resting in her open palm. "In our history books," Maya said, her voice echoing in the vast hall, "we have stories about people who did the impossible when they were pushed too far. We call it hysterical strength. Usually, it happens when a mother needs to lift a car off her child. But sometimes, it happens when someone is tired of being looked down on." She was only 10 feet away from him now. The heat from her hand was making Krell's armor smoke. The instructor backed up until his spine hit the reinforced wall of the training arena. He had nowhere else to go. "You wanted to see adrenaline, Commander," Maya continued. "But you made a mistake. You thought adrenaline was just a fuel for running away. You forgot that for humans, it's also the fuel for the fight." The other students were now pressed against the far doors, watching in a mix of horror and awe. They realized they weren't just watching a training exercise anymore. They were witnessing the moment the galaxy's power dynamic shifted forever. For centuries, the Deathworlder title had belonged to the heavy, armored species like Krell's. But standing there was a girl with no armor, holding a sun in her hand, proving that the most dangerous thing in the universe wasn't a claw or a gun. It was a human who had reached her limit. Maya stopped just inches from the barrel of Krell's gun. She looked him right in his main set of eyes. "This is yours, I believe," she said. With a flick of her wrist, she tossed the cooling plasma core at Krell's feet. It hit his heavy combat boots and shattered like glass, releasing a final burst of blue sparks that singed the floor. Krell collapsed. His legs simply gave out. He sat there on the floor, the mighty, six-armed warrior, looking up at the human girl he had mocked just 10 minutes ago. He looked at her hand. The red color was already fading, her skin returning to its normal, pale tone as if nothing had happened. The Academy's central AI, which had been silent during the chaos, finally spoke. Its voice was different now, devoid of its usual cold, robotic tone. It sounded almost afraid. "Emergency alert. Combat analysis complete." The AI announced. "Human biological capability has exceeded all known parameters. Threat level Omega. All security personnel are ordered to evacuate the sector immediately. Do not engage. I repeat, do not engage the human. The heavy blast doors at the back of the room hissed open. But instead of guards rushing in to arrest Maya, they were running away from the room. Maya turned around and looked at her classmates. The blue-skinned cadets, the giant-scaled warriors, and the telepaths all took a collective step back. They weren't looking at a friend or a classmate anymore. They were looking at the top of the food chain. Maya reached down, picked up her water bottle from the bench, and took a slow sip. Does this mean I passed the reflex test? She asked the room. No one answered. No one dared to. The red emergency lights of the academy pulsed like a dying heartbeat. The announcement from the AI hadn't just been a warning. It was a death knell for the old way of thinking. Extinction tier. Those two words hung in the air, heavier than the smoke from Krell's pistol. In the history of the Galactic Council, only 3 species had ever been given that classification. All 3 were now extinct because they were too dangerous to let live. But those species were monsters. They were giant hive minds or planet-eating beasts. Maya was just a girl in a gray jumpsuit. Or at least, that's what she looked like. Maya stood over Commander Krell, who was still trembling on the floor. His 6 arms were tangled together in a mess of panic and shame. He looked up at her, his breathing coming in ragged, wet clicks. What are you? He managed to choke out. No biological heart can pump that fast. No muscles are that dense. You're a demon in a skin suit. Maya looked down at her hand. The red glow was gone, but her palm felt itchy, humming with a leftover energy that didn't belong to this world. She leaned in close to Krell, her voice a low whisper that only he could hear. We grew up on a planet that tried to kill us every day, she said. We survived volcanoes, ice ages, and predators that make you look like a house pet. We didn't survive because we were the strongest. We survived because we refused to die. You didn't just fire a gun at me, Commander. You tried to prove that I was beneath you. And humans, we have a very long memory for that kind of thing. Suddenly, the massive observation windows at the top of the hall darkened. A shadow, massive and jagged, blocked out the artificial sun of the Academy's star system. The alien cadets screamed and pointed upward. It wasn't an Academy ship. It wasn't a Council cruiser. It was a human dreadnought. It was called the UNS Relentless. It looked like a giant, brutal slab of black iron, covered in more railguns and missile pods than the entire Academy defense fleet. Humans didn't make their ships pretty. They made them terrifying. A holographic beam shot down from the ceiling, and a man appeared in the center of the hall. He wore a crisp, white military uniform with enough medals to cover his chest. This was Admiral Vance, the human representative to the Council. He didn't look at Krell. He didn't look at the scared students. He looked straight at Maya. Cadet Maya, Vance said, his voice booming like thunder. Are you injured? My hand is a bit warm, Admiral, Maya replied, her posture snapping into a perfect military salute. But the lesson is finished. Vance turned his gaze to Krell. The look in the Admiral's eyes was colder than the vacuum of space. Commander Krell, he said, we received a data burst from the Academy AI. It seems you attempted to execute a human citizen during a training exercise. The Human Federation considers this an act of war. Krell scrambled to his feet, his many hands waving frantically. It was a test! A reflex test! I didn't think she could. You didn't think? Vance interrupted. That is the problem with the galaxy. You see us eating, sleeping, and laughing, and you think we are soft. You see us choosing diplomacy over fire, and you think we are weak. You forgot that the only reason humans are peaceful is because we choose to be. We spent 10,000 years killing each other before we reached the stars. We are very, very good at it. The Admiral stepped closer to Krell, his boots clicking on the metal floor that Maya had cracked moments ago. The Council classifies us as harmless because we asked them to, Vance continued. We didn't want to scare you. We wanted to be your friends. We wanted to trade art, science, and stories. But if you want the extinction tier version of humanity, we can provide that too. On the giant screens around the room, LEV feeds began to flicker on. They showed human fleets appearing in every major sector of the galaxy. Not firing, not attacking, just there. Thousands of black iron ships, sitting silently outside the capital planets of every species that had ever mocked a human. The message was clear: we have always been stronger. We just didn't want you to know. Vance looked at the other students. Go home, he told them. Tell your governments what you saw today. Tell them that a human girl caught a sun with her bare hands. Tell them that if they ever point a weapon at one of us again, they won't live long enough to hear the bang. The Admiral turned back to Maya. Come on, kid. We're going home. Your mother is worried, And you've got a medal waiting for you." Maya nodded. She looked at the blue-skinned cadet who had been her only friend at the academy. She reached out and shook his hand. The boy trembled, but Maya gave him a warm, genuine smile. "Don't worry," she whispered. "We're still the same people. Just don't let anyone pull the trigger again." As Maya and Admiral Vance walked into the light of the transporter beam, the entire academy remained in total silence. Krell stood in the middle of his ruined classroom, surrounded by the shattered remains of his pride. He looked at the floor where the plasma core had shattered. He realized then that the galaxy had been living in a golden age of peace, not because the Council was strong, but because humanity was kind. And today he had nearly ended that age. The light faded, and the humans were gone. The dreadnought in the sky vanished into hyperspace as quickly as it had arrived. For the next 1,000 years, the reflex test was removed from the Academy's curriculum. In its place, a new rule was carved into the stone of the entrance gates, written in every language of the galaxy. Orna pensifa amanaya spia stat anaya spiha kakadasia tx hedi htyg antrtil on sby vilin itgo. The harmless file was deleted from every computer in the universe. In its place was a single red-coded document that simply said, "Leave them alone. For your own sake." Maya's name became a legend. She wasn't the girl who survived. She was the girl who taught the stars to be afraid of the dark. And in every corner of the universe, whenever an alien looked at a human, they didn't see a soft creature anymore. They saw a sleeping giant that they prayed would never wake up again.